S&P breaks out of a trading range. The Nasdaq stays in its trading range ahead of key data tomorrow. Small caps outperformed today. We'll explain why. Bitcoin continues to ride its trend line, but Bitcoin names are actually breaking out. Some of the leaders reversed today. We're going to talk about what happened with Snow and Micron. Overstock continues to push. We'll go over what was the leading sector and what economic data made that happen. We have a lot to go over, so let's get... Hey everybody, welcome back. So today in the pre-market live, we talked about some key levels here, and we're just going to mark them off so we can all see what we're talking about here. So 44 and a quarter, 44.30, that was a key resistance area. We talked about this 43.72, and we talked about roughly in here this 4400. And really what we were looking for is for this to make some kind of decision, right? We didn't really need to get overly involved until it made some kind of decision. And we're starting to see a tale of two tapes. I'm going to explain what I mean by that in a moment here. But we can see the previous run-up, we can see the test, and we can see where we're sitting right now. So this is pretty clear that we're stepping up, right? And we can see that. So I like the way that the S&P is acting. And this had to make a decision today. Now, one of the key metrics I use, and I'll clean up these levels, I like using a 12 SMA, that's in orange. And you can see that we had a doji, and now we closed at the high over that doji. We didn't have to do that today. You had pending home sales that were down. You have numbers that came out, GDP, you have PCE tomorrow. You didn't have to do what you did today. And there's some things that are going on that we should probably discuss just so people can get a better sense of what's really going on out there, because to me, it's becoming pretty obvious. But I think that it would be very helpful to go over this. So bear with me while I get through some of these, and then we'll go from there. I would watch those key levels again tomorrow. I would also note what's going on here with the Nasdaq, and that the Nasdaq's struggling with the 12. And I could do a whole video on why I use a 12, but bottom line is I use a 12. And I use an SMA, and now I'm looking at that, and there's very little to say about that or to be excited about. In the pre-market live, we talked about this, and I really hammered this home today when we were doing the in our community, and I'll show you in a moment here. It's something that when you start to see this kind of thing, you just really want to pay attention to. Let's do it this way. You just want to start paying attention to it. Let's get rid of this, and we're going to get rid of the RSI. Let's get rid of the 9, and let's just drill into this. So when you start seeing these trading ranges, right, you start seeing where the algos are and how they're acting at certain areas, you mark those. But you always mark like really the bottom, and you want at least 2 hits on the bottom, or else you just really have an undercut where they were just stop hunting, right? You want to be aware of it, but you really want to know where that line is, because that tells you where they're stopping, and then sometimes they'll undercut to see what they can fish. And that's exactly what happened today. At the same time, we talked about this level this morning. We've been talking about it since last night. If you note, all these videos are linked together. So if you see what's happening, 15.2, you're just unable to break, right? So I always tell people to subscribe to the channel if they want actual actionable information, or at least levels that they could use to make better decisions. Anyway, see where you're at right here, and then you tried, and then you failed, came all the way back down, tries to rally, cannot, tests, doesn't break. So we just had a game of Pong today. There really was not much going on there, and there certainly wasn't much to say about it. So I don't really see a sense in doing or saying a lot here. I think you're seeing that kind of sideways actions into the long weekend. Let's go over the SOXX here and just look at this on an hourly, and let's get rid of the extended trading hours, because I think that it's important to get that Monday you have half a day, and then Tuesday you're off. So you're going into a long weekend, you're dealing with window dressing tomorrow, you're dealing with pension funds that are liquidating to rebalance and buy bonds. And while all this is going on, we're trying to buy tech stocks. And we're seeing all these things play out, and a lot of people are just stepping away and saying, you know what, I'll deal with this on Wednesday, and I'm going to go have a really nice weekend. And that's what we're seeing right now. So I'm not really seeing what my catalyst is going to be. Now, tomorrow you have PCE, and that PCE number could move us, but we really want to watch that 500 and just see how we're acting in here. If you just look at it from that perspective, you can kind of see that, yeah, we're kind of forming a little bit of a flag. If I throw it in with the 12 and the 22 and the 55 right here, I'm riding the 22, but I'm wedged in here. So I need to make a decision. I don't like being wedged in here. And what we saw a lot of today was run them up and then kind of suck the air out of them. You know, you saw that with snow, and I want to address this. You see this a lot. You have a great conference. Everybody loves the conference. The day after the conference, even with all the upgrades and everything and positive comments coming out of all the investment banks, people were just like, you know what, get me out. I don't want to be in this. Took out the low. We had some guys in there trading this today that did very well with it. And then you just, you know, today was just a bad day with it. And that's going to happen. And there's not really much you're going to be able to do about that, right? Everybody's they're not going to always go straight up. I mean, straight up is not a pattern. So you can see the break, and then you just kind of see how you start to turn here, and then you can start seeing from there. I'd be real careful of names right now that are gap filling and then unable to hold that gap, right? That's definitely something that I watch. I tried this SMCI today, and it did exactly what I was just talking about, where here you are, and I wanted it to hold, looked like it was going to hold, and then it just didn't. And what they're doing is they're flushing people out because they have really low volume, so they're able to really control the stocks right now. That's why people are getting stopped out and then they're ripping. One thing you're going to note about tomorrow too is you're going to see that a lot, and it's going to be extremely frustrating. So I would tell you to be looking at, you know, almost adding to these names where you see supply instead of selling them at stops there. And this was, I mean, classic example. I undercut here, and then I basically get back to flat and just close the darn thing. But my hope was that when I got here that I was going to push. We didn't do that today. We're not seeing that in the tech names. Now, people will say, well, that's due to Micron and people really understanding that Micron has to go out and spend a lot of money. Look, I've got 5 investment banks that think what Micron's quarter showed is that there is very strong demand out there. Very strong demand. And then I have retail, which trades in the first half hour to hour, that decided to dump the stock. Okay, if you take a look at this stock from 10 o'clock on, you had nothing but buyers. We know who acts in the first half hour, right? So maybe there's another day of this. Maybe they just want to see how far down they're going to sell it. But usually you have like 2 days of this, and then I wouldn't be surprised to see some kind of support in that name. I think that's very realistic to see. So, you know, we're going to have to watch this, and we're going to have to see how this plays out. Now, I'm not saying that if you're a shareholder, you should be doing cartwheels when you see this. I would just argue that we've seen this story so many times. We have 2 or 3 days where you just sell down, and everybody tells you that it's an area that you have to get out of. And then what happens, right? We just kind of reverse and go from there. At the time of filming this, we're getting a little bit of news, so I'm just going to go over it. Nike's earnings were not ideal, and I'm reading the headlines, and they're talking about markdowns. Now, I want to be clear. I'm looking at this before they do their conference call. But when they're talking about markdowns and tough environment and margin, you don't want to hear those words from a premium brand. Okay, this is really bad. I'm surprised that you're only down this amount. Candidly, at the time of filming this, I have a short position on this, but you watch this 882 level, 108.82. My next level there is 104.83, and then I'd watch this 113. But I just wanted to go over this because this is going to be a pivotal stock tomorrow. They're going to bounce it around, and it's actually going to lead into really what I want to talk about next, which is these retail names. Before I get into the economic data and how everyone's concerned about pending home sales, I just want to point something out. Very quietly, we're just grinding and grinding higher here, okay? And I think that's a really important distinction that not a lot of people are paying attention to. And I think it's something that we should be paying attention to, and I'm going to show you why. So in the Alpha Chasers community, what I do all the time is I rank the ideas that I present, all the alerts, right? I present them, and then I also will quantify them by sector, right? And one of the reasons I do that is because I can say, okay, what's working, what's not working. We bought Apple at roughly 180. And during that period of time, it's done nothing but go up if you take a look at it right now. What I'm going to do here is, what we're doing here is simple. I would just want to show you that this is NVIDIA in dark blue here. And if I told you that technology is the way to go and you're watching these tech stocks and they're going crazy, if I was to tell you that they've been outperformed by Apple, Ferrari, Elf, Alta over the past 2 weeks, you probably won't believe me. But when you put this data in there, and I'm going to show it to you right here, so you can see where you're at and who's leading, right? ELF is leading over the past 2 weeks. And then you just start going through them. Ferrari is leading. And you start looking at this, Alta, Apple, right? So when you start to look at this, you start to understand that very quietly as we're watching, NVIDIA go up or down 20 points, these names are just grinding higher over the past 2 weeks. And here's obviously their respective returns. This is a really important distinction. To put it in perspective, the blue line is now XLK, the entire technology sector. So we've been getting outperformed by beauty companies. Now, if we take that data, right, and then we notice that, and then we drill into it. Okay, so we have XLK, the technology sector, and then compare other sectors over the past 2 weeks. So you can see right here in the orange, right here, you have the XLI, okay, which is industrials, which looks like, I believe we hit a 52-week high today, or we're darn close to it. Then you go here and you look at home builders. Well, they're going crazy over the past 2 weeks. And you can just start seeing this. And so while we're chasing tech, home builders, beauty supply companies, and industrials are hitting highs. This market is broadening out. That doesn't mean I'm done with tech. This is actually really good for tech because what we're doing is we're rotating over and over again. See how tech was leading? Now it's not. This is exactly what you see. This is what you want. This is extremely healthy. Now we're going into a long weekend. You have the half day on Monday. Tuesday we're off. Usually these are the kinds of weekends that you see Bitcoin get a little goofy. I'll tell you what I see going on out there is I see this whole sector setting up to push. This is actually not down. It's more of an anomaly right there. So if you start looking at these like Mara, this is hitting highs. This whole sector, we're got a court date coming out here. This whole sector is starting to push higher and higher. I would not rule out that sector. You're starting to see some names, they're starting to shake the tree a little bit and see who's going to come out. And that's just fine. Let me remove these drawings and then set this up again. You're going to want to watch this name and you're going to want to pay attention to this. I don't think that Carvani is done. I think all you did was come back, gap fill a little bit right in here and then get ahead of yourself. Now what's happened the last 3 times we got ahead of ourselves, we made a lower low and then we found some kind of reversal and it made sense to get involved. This snow news is just basically 5 people came out and upgraded the stock and their target based upon this conference that they held all week. And apparently we just had to sell the news event. I'm not really going to sweat that. But I do want to get into this overstock because I think this is something that can continue to move tomorrow. And one of the reasons I think that is the name change is actually a big deal, right? People like that name. People are going to go to that name. If they brand themselves Bed Bath & Beyond, they're going to get more business, period. Because people are just going to go to that website or however they link Overstock to that website. I'm sure they have people that are much more skilled at that than I am explaining. And that is something that's going to be huge for a company like this. So this is definitely something that I would be paying attention to tomorrow. I couldn't really find the right way in today. I will tell you this. It just looked like you just say buy off the open, but it's not really a plan, is it? You're going to buy off the open, then you're just going to hold it for $5 as it bounces you around. Good luck with that. You need a plan. But you did kind of pull back and then hold and kind of go sideways. So, we'll see what tomorrow brings with it. I'll tell you the one level that I would want to watch is just that reversal right up here. When a stock can't do like a 5-minute orb opening range breakout, I always want to just watch and see what's happening with it. But I do like this name, and it is one that I would be paying attention to. I would expect light volume tomorrow. I would not expect a lot out of the market. For me, I think the most important thing that you can do is just watch the Nasdaq tomorrow, candidly, and just make sure of your levels. Now, we'll be live tomorrow, and I would suggest that if you can, even if you can't make it, just listen to the live after. It's usually between 8:15 to 8:30 that we kick off. Tomorrow will be no later than 8:30 because PCE is coming out. PCE will set the tone for the entire open. Okay, that is the biggest piece of data that Powell looks at is PCE. So, but I would just keep in mind, look, watch these levels and see how it goes tomorrow. That's it.